Hey, you are listening to Oh Crap Parenting with me, your host, Jamie Glowacki. This is a podcast for conscious parents who drop the F-bomb a lot. Hey, you guys. Welcome. Oh my God, I am so excited. So if you are watching this on YouTube, you can see I have a new background. So I found a co-working space in Providence, and I am so excited. And the reason I'm telling you this is because I wanted to do a podcast about my process in finding this, because it's really about finding where is the friction in your life and how can you fix it. So what was happening for me, I have worked from home since I took him out of first grade. And that's when I sold my brick and mortar store and started homeschooling. And it's always been a juggling act, and I have written 2 full books and revised 1 book in Pascal's lifetime. And, working from home, as most of you learned in the pandemic, can be a challenge with kids, with animals. And a lot of times I go through these phases of nothing's working. Like I'm not doing anything well. I'm doing all the things, but none of them well. And I've always known it's really better to sort of delineate work time, right? And so my job is different. Like it's different than even working during the pandemic. I don't necessarily, I don't have to create 9 to 5. I don't have to work that way. I don't have to keep my mouse busy like I heard people doing in the pandemic. I get to choose my hours, even my client work, I get to shuffle around, and I record podcasts and Instagram and emails and newsletters and all those things that take, that you have to do to run a business in this day and age. But it'll stay good for a little while, and then things just kind of get out of hand. And so I have tried all manner of things, and I already get up at 3:45 in the morning. So getting up earlier is not an option. And I also don't work really well after 5 p.m. Like by 5 p.m., I have got to shut down, and typically even a little bit later. So my prime hours are 4 in the morning to 11 is when I work the best. So I have tried everything, like Pascal, don't bother me, but I still have Maverick, and I try to put him on daycare on the days I'm recording, but sometimes I can't. And then now we have roosters, and the roosters are so annoying. What's coming to light is now we have 4 roosters. We already got rid of 4. And they are crowing all the time. And I was like, oh my God, this is driving me crazy. So trying to find time to record a podcast or even YouTube videos just to have a little quiet was stressing me out. And I didn't realize it till I was like, oh my God, I can't, I just don't have time. So it was this high point of friction and causing me a lot of distress. So I was like, okay. And the other day, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago, I said, God, this would be so different if I was one of those moms who went to work, And listen, Pascal is great. He's 18. He's a great kid. And I always hate to say anything bad about him, but the teen brain, the executive functioning is just on one day and off another day. It's wild to watch. It's they'll have all their stuff together and everything will be awesome. And then the next day, it's you're starting from ground zero again. And I even said, geez, if I could get a map of when his executive functioning is online, that'd be really great. But it's little things that would be an emergency, and admittedly, he is very bad at time management. I don't know how, how they say model the behavior. I have always modeled excellent time management, and he doesn't have it. And I do think this is one of the flaws of homeschooling, is that you just don't have to always do the grind, I mean, it's a benefit too. You're not grinding as a kid, but that is one thing that happens. You have, this has to be in on this time. You have to get up in the morning. You have to do this. You have to do that. And sometimes I do think that when you have a schedule, a really tight schedule, you get things done. When I first sold my store and didn't have to be somewhere to open the doors at 9 o'clock in the morning, I was a little bit lost for a while because I was like, whoa, when you don't have a tight schedule, you can get lost in it. If you don't have to do laundry tonight, you can put it off. And so I was like, oh, this is what like retired people probably go through, like this kind of lost thing. So anyway, the other day I was just like, the chickens had gotten out of their gating, and it was a minor emergency, but catching 20 chickens is not easy. And I was like, if I was at work, I couldn't have done anything about this, and Pascal will be heading to work and he'll be like, I ran out of time. Can you make me food? And I'm like, oh my God, I was just going to sit down and record a podcast, or I was just in the middle of something. Or he'll be irritated because I have a client. And I'm like, dude, like I work. And this has been a problem since I've worked from home, and particularly as an author, right? Because it's consulting and there's a lot of social media. There's a lot of like these extras, the podcast. And so throughout the last 15 years, I really have been like, I work. People don't seem to understand that I work because I think it doesn't look like work to the average person. And there's not a stringent schedule, right? So I was like, if I could just go to work, if I could be a mom who goes to work, this would all be done. And I had this light bulb moment. I was like, oh my God, I have to go to work. I have to go to work. So I thought maybe I could use, my mom's house. My stepdad is there, of course, and their house is very quiet now. So I thought, oh, okay, I'll maybe go use their house, but it's a little farther away and it just wasn't the right setup. I don't like the art on our walls. And like, it just was kind of awkward. So then my business team said, hey, do you have a co-working space? And I was like, co-working space? I thought that was for like big cities, not, Providence isn't that big a city. And I looked it up, and sure enough, they have these co-working spaces, and this space is great. There are like little meeting rooms. I'm in a meeting room right now, but there's cubicles, which I'm not fond of, but there's all this common space, and there's like 5 rooms that are just like, there's a pool table and couches. And so anyway, I am so excited about this because I can just record a podcast in peace. It's quiet. There's no roosters. There's no dog barking. There's no teenager with an emergency. And it's just like 1,000 pounds was lifted off my chest. And the reason I'm bringing this up is, to share part of my life with you, because you guys are my people, but also when I work with clients, we always work, whether it's parenting or potty training, I always call them hot spots. Like, what are the hot spots? Where are you having the most friction in your life? And I think it's really important to kind of compartmentalize these ideas, because how your day plays out will let you know where the hot spots are. And for a lot of people, those hot spots are trying to get out of the house in the morning and like dinner time, particularly when you have kids, I would say under 10, but most like under 7 for sure. Where are the hot spots? Because when you can identify where the friction is, and this takes some time. Guys, I was about ready to lose my mind. Like, I was like, what is happening? I can't get up any earlier. Like, I'm available, I'm making the time, but something's always cropping up. And it felt like life was just sort of, when you, I don't know if you've ever been caught in a riptide in the ocean, but it's like unending waves just coming over me. And it was affecting me in ways that I didn't even know. And so everything was off. And so now it is, I just get to come for a couple of hours in this workspace, and it, when I say 1,000 pounds off my chest, just the idea, as soon as somebody said a co-working space, I was like, oh, yes. Like, I don't make enough, to be honest, to warrant a full office. Right. But I do. This co-working space is really reasonable. And again, the 1,000 pounds off my chest, just the idea of that had me so excited. I was like, this is going to solve everything. And it is. When you can identify the frictions in your life, and this can take some work if you're like brand new to this kind of thinking, where we all wake up in the morning, right? We all wake up in the morning and we vowed to be our best selves for our kids, especially. I'm going to be a good parent today. I'm going to not lose my shit today, right? We all wake up like that. And very shortly, that is dashed. So when you find your friction points, you can alleviate a lot of other stresses as well. And you may not know that these tiny friction points are responsible for a large amount of your rage, a large amount of your feeling defeated, a large amount of you losing your shit. And it seems like when our kids exhibit, some quote unquote bad behavior, when they're not doing what we ask them to do, when we've lost connection with them, it can seem like that's the trigger. Right? That's the trigger that makes us lose our shit. That's the trigger that sends us into rage. Our partners, not showing up, not loading the dishwasher at night, whatever it is. It seems like that's the issue. The other person has to fix it. And I was doing that too. I was like, Pascal needs to get his shit together. Maverick needs to stop barking. But the great thing about animals is I cannot control the crows coming out of the roosters. I cannot control when Amazon shows up and Maverick loses it. So I knew it was something had to shift with me, right? With you guys, I want you to stop and think, okay, where are the moments that I lose my shit? And it can seem, again, like it's your kid. Oh, I only lose my shit when they won't eat their breakfast or throw their food. Okay. That seems like that's the thing. But is it? Or is it the morning transition in general? Are you waking up too late? Is your child waking up too late? Now that is a fixable thing, right? Is that an earlier bedtime? And it takes some reverse engineering here, right? Is it when you get home, right? And one of the things I'm such a big proponent of, and I'm actually going to do a follow-up episode to this one on how to make meal ideas simpler, way simpler. But one of the things that happens is we get home, it's a cluster, we're trying to cook, we're trying to get dinner on the table, right? Especially if you're single or both parents work outside the home, that coming home is just ridiculous. And so that's why I'm such a big proponent of giving more nutritious food around 3 or 4 o'clock. And so that there's a lot of pressure alleviated in that 6 o'clock zone where you're not necessarily cooking and trying to do all the things, right? So when you get home, a lot of times when I was working and Pascal was in kindergarten, we did breakfast in the tub is what I called it, because he needed to play after school. He needed to eat. He needed to do some homework, and he needed to, connect with me. And it was just like I was getting him, at 3 or 4 o'clock even. So I was able to get him right after school. But by the time we did all the things that we were supposed to do and have a reasonably early bedtime, because at that time he was still going to bed, I think at 6 or 6:30. So sometimes I had to bathe him and give him scrambled eggs while he was in the tub, right? And so that worked for us. That was one solution, because I was like, I can't do everything here in this allotted time slot. Now, if the friction is getting dressed in the morning, that might look like picking out clothes the night before, or at least 2 options, right? That's an awesome thing. I used to work with a woman who had those, plastic Rubbermaids with drawers. So they were thin kind of drawers, and they would pick out the outfit for the week, and all the clothes would be in the drawers. So the kids could just go in the drawer the next day, take the next drawer, and everything was all picked out. So your kid still gets a choice, but there's no arguing. Nope, we picked this out. These are the clothes. It might mean packing lunches the night before so that you're not trying to do that in the morning. It might mean making egg cups. I make those for Pascal all the time. You make them in muffin tins so that something hot, nutritious is already ready to go. It might mean for you waking up a little bit earlier. And I know people hate to hear this, but I just feel like as a busy parent, there's almost no option but to get up just a little bit earlier so you can write your to-do list, maybe journal, maybe just sit with a hot cup of coffee, even if it's 15 minutes, just a little bit earlier than everybody else. And I see some kickback against this in social media, but I don't know. I never found a way around it. And again, maybe just being single, that was sort of my lot in life. But I think it's just super important to get that time for yourself. If it is at night, maybe that looks like putting food in a crock pot so that the meal is just about ready when you walk through the door. And again, I'm going to do a whole nother podcast on like ideas, specific ideas to help with meal times. But finding like, is it cooking? Does cooking piss you off at night, right? Maybe it's using paper plates for a couple of nights a week. And I know that can be wasteful, but also sometimes you just need the break, right? Is it leaving the dishes till morning? I personally cannot do that. Sometimes I do it when I just don't have the capacity, but maybe that's a solution. Whatever it is, if you find those friction points, you will find that time will go easier. And remember, a lot of the friction points with our kids, when they start having quote unquote bad behavior, undesirable behavior kicking up, certainly developmentally, that's just going to happen sometimes. But a lot of times it can be mitigated by looking a few steps ahead. What happened before that? And almost 100% of the time, it's because your child does not feel connected to you. So I've mentioned this before on the podcast. I used to have a friend. We just fell out of touch, but I went to visit her. She had a 3-year-old and a baby. And I went to visit her she had lived in North Carolina, and their mornings were unbelievable. They woke up to no big lights on, soft lights. They had like twinkle lights or candles sometimes. The very first thing they do when the kids get out of bed is sit and read a story with the kid. I thought that, I was like, I never even thought of that. That's so much better than reading at night. They eased into the day, and it took no more time than being rushed and yelling at your kid and not getting them to do the things they need to do. And these kids, the 3-year-old, I can't say kids because the baby didn't have much of a choice, but the 3-year-old was so connected to her parents as soon as she woke up that everything else flowed with ease. So remember, your kids are coming off, 10 to 12 hours of sleep. They haven't connected with you. That's still time away, right? Unless you're co-sleeping. But even then, they were asleep. They need you in the morning, and you need to do 100,000 things, right? So what are ways that you can change that dynamic? Now, certainly maybe you don't have time to sit and read a story, but a lot of times what I see, parents say, I don't have time. Like, we'll work through strategies like that, right? In a private consult. And they'll say, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. I'm rushed in the morning. I have to be out by 7:00. Okay, fine. But you're coming to me because at 6:30, the shit is hitting the fan in the house. It's so frustrating. So you're going to spend 10 minutes arguing with your kid or 10 minutes reading to your kid? Which is better? And how to set the day, right? Because if you are still arguing with your kid, shoveling them into the car, come on, we got to go. You didn't remember your shoes. I didn't have time for my coffee. Where is the water? That sets everybody up for a poor day. It sets you up. You feel like a shitty parent. It sets your kid up for a bad day because it's just started the day with contention, right? Far better to take that 10 minutes and spend it connecting. So I would argue that I think you do have time. Unless you have 10 minutes to get out the door and your kid is totally like, yes, mommy, I will eat all my breakfast right away. I'll go brush my teeth and get my shoes on. No problem. I don't know many kids like that, but if your kid's doing that, great. Once again, I never want to fix anything that's not broken. But we take that time now, same thing after they've spent a day in school, right? They spent a whole day in school or daycare. Now they want to connect with you. They don't want to be even a screen. They would much rather be connecting with you than being kind of shoved off to play so you can make dinner. And again, if you have the kind of family that dinner set up where you're all in the kitchen cooking together and it's great connection time and that's awesome, great. A large amount of people, that's not true. So there are so many ways to solve the problem. And one of the things I find that when I feel like there is friction, when I feel like there is a problem and I don't know how to solve it, I do, number one, try to sit and let my mind be idle. And if you listen to my episode on burnout and phone, this is so key in our environment today, where technology is so at our fingertips. We use our phones for everything. And whether or not you're using it to just zone out and scroll, Instagram or social media, I don't care, or you're using it to make appointments or your grocery list, we're still connected to that technology, and we're not letting our brains be idle. Just run, just let it run. And I feel like the brain is a little like a sieve that you can kind of shake things out. And so a lot of times that's what I will put it out to the universe, God, source, whoever, whatever you believe in, and say, here's a friction point. I need answers. Because listen, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm willing to bet you're highly educated, if not just regular street smart, right? You're conscious, you're aware of these things. You're more aware of yourself than most. And you may not have the answers, but if you ask for the answers will come in a very strange moment, usually, right? And you might have that light bulb that I had, which was like, this wouldn't happen if I just went to work. And it's like, well, then go to work. Go somewhere for work. So I hope that helps. Usually, again, I find that the friction points, these hot spots, are pretty common. I think, we all know the witching hour is like 3 to 6 p.m. That's when kids are just exhausted. They're running on empty on all things. They're running on empty, usually on food. They're running empty on energy, and they're running empty on connection with you. So when we can hit these hot spots dead on and not accuse it, not think that it's our child's job to show up differently, right? That's the key thing. A lot of times, and this has become really prevalent in today's just parenting society in general, is my kid is doing X, help me fix X. We can't just look at X. We can't just look at the behavior. Yeah. We have to look at what's happening before. Why is your child acting this way? And so many times we have an unrealistic expectation of the child just showing up differently. You're not going to have a perfect child. You're not going to be a perfect parent. So we have to look at these other things. Okay. Is it time management? Is it meal management? Is it picking out clothes ahead of time? All these various strategies, there are 1,000 ways to readjust it. And one of the beauties, I recognize that I have a different life than most people because I am a junkie for freedom. Like my time, I get very wiggly. I think I was destined to never work for somebody else because the minute I get like a tight schedule that I have to do that I haven't chosen, I get real antsy. So I think that's just my personality, but I also have a life that I can like shuffle things around. I have the capability of recording many podcasts in a row, so I can take a couple of days off. I recognize that I have a different life, but I think you have more control over your life than you might suppose. And there are 1,000 ways to do this. And so many times we get stuck in like, what it's supposed to look like because we hear of other families, or that's how it was done in our family, or we look at social media. For example, that friend who decided to slow roll into her mornings with low lighting and reading books as a way to open the day. That typically is a nighttime routine, right? And so I think some of this is like, don't be afraid to do something completely different than you've ever heard of if it works for your family, because I think we just get so lost in like, this is what we do. We wake up, we da 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 da, and that can create not only a lot of friction, not only a lot of hot spots, but it can create this monotony of like just doing the same thing over and over. And children need routine. I like routine, but I also like doing things a little out of the ordinary. So I really encourage you. I've talked about this before, is like, you get to design your life. If a hot spot, if a friction is always trying to get your kid out for that activity, that sport, that class, and they hate it, ditch the class. Like, you don't need that friction in your life. And I just am running into parents who are so stressed and so burnt out because it's friction after friction after friction. It's that wave, getting caught in the ocean, that wave just beating over you. And it's like, you can't catch your breath. You can't catch a break. And you're just exhausted and stressed out all the time. And I really don't want that for you. And I don't want that for your kids. All right, you guys, as always, I appreciate you listening. If you like this podcast, please share it with other people. I have been sharing podcasts. I forget to do that myself. I find a podcast now that I love and I'm like, here, everybody listen to this. And like and subscribe, okay, on YouTube or Spotify or Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. And have a beautiful day. Rock on.
Okay, bye everyone. Just a reminder, if you need additional resources, I have Oh Crap Potty Training. I have Oh Crap, I Have a Toddler. Those books are available everywhere you want to find a book. You can also go to my website, jamieglowacki.com, where you can book private sessions with me, buy any of my courses. Those are really geared towards potty training help. And also I'm on Instagram. I'm not on Facebook anymore and I'm not on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, jamie.glowacki, and I do a lot of lives and usually posting a lot of good information. So those are extra resources for you. And as always, rock on. Have an awesome day.